an old adage, never follow kids or dogs. Have mercy. My name is Robert Wisecarver. I've been a resident of Atkinson for 38 years. I have 2 children who are both educated through the Timberlane system. Both participated in the Timberlane Players. And my wife and I have attended nearly all the productions since 1991. We were active in the production process back in the day when we used to put these shows on in the gymnasium, and continued to be active until about 3 years after the pack was finally completed. I came to the meeting not really sure what the issue was. Having only limited information from the paper, I wasn't sure if it was the scope, nature, and content of this particular production, whether it was the educational value for the student, the enjoyment experience of the audience, the selection process as to how a play actually gets designated and appointed to be produced, and lastly, who has the final authority and say and I guess basically who is the decision maker. I can only speak to the nature and content and scope of the past productions, but maybe I was a little misled by the titles. I never thought that adultery and dishonesty would be the basis of a lifestyle in Camelot. Could sexual harassment, bullying, and class disparity really be the underlying theme for a girl who just could dance all night in My Fair Lady? And is racial discrimination really only prevalent in the South Pacific? I can tell you I've never left the theater embarrassed, disgusted, or appalled by the content or presentation of any of the productions that I watched. More importantly, I always felt that the students understood the message and the story and were proud of how honestly and tastefully they delivered the message. And I might remind you there have been some pretty sensitive and severe issues that have been part of our history here. Whether it be hatred in Laramie or the horror of Auschwitz. The shows were presented tastefully, with dignity and maturity. I asked a couple earlier on, was it just the scope of the production or were there other questions? I have to believe that we put these productions on primarily for the educational experience of the student. Rehearsal, memorization, teamwork, the continuity of thought, presentation and public speaking are just some of the skills that they'll use whether they're on or off Broadway. And what I particularly found impressive was that you've already had several students get up and speak to a rather large group without stuttering, without saying ah, not chewing gum. You can be sure that skill was not acquired in the Twitter sphere. I honestly understand that performers deserve and want an audience. But just like any curriculum in a school, it's geared to the grade level of the student. Such is the case for a reader of a book or an audience in a theater. With regard to my production selection and who has the final authority questions, I don't think anyone in this part of the room, with the exception of maybe the students, has the answer to that. I do think that entirely rests with recommendations from the students and a cohesive decision process between the production and direction staff and the administration of the district. And I would ask that they get the spotlight off the empty stage and focus back more on the performance. I'm here to support the legacy, commitment, and dedication of the director and producer of the shows at Timberlane, all of the student performers, and to express my confidence in their continued production of quality, education, and beneficial theater. Thank you.